Oh, testing. Still got some empty chairs up front. If anybody wants to sit down.
I'm not going to talk long, so you can go on.
Okay.
What did you just say?
Sit down.
Raise your right
sit
hand
down.
and repeat.
I'm going to turn the vote against you. I'll tell them what kind of student you were.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Remember, I follow you.
Well, that's all right. I've got to leave after I finish. So
That makes it even better.
in fact, I wouldn't want to hear all that talk
Okay.
about voting.
If we don't get started, we'll never get finished. Forgive me if this sounds a little bit formal. I worked on this 10-page speech I have here, and I was going to work in a couple of other...
I see you, brother.
Okay. Well, it's large print. It'll go quick. But I tend to write in a little more formal style than the occasion seems to require right now. We're kind of an intimate, informal group here, and so I'm going to kind of probably dance back and forth between being formal and informal with my remarks.
Hand dance.
What's that? Hand dance?
Hand dance.
Call choreography.
Hey, this is Wyldewood.
Only hands and arms.
I don't understand this. What are you trying to do?
Dance back and forth. She said you can't dance.
Oh, can't dance. I knew I couldn't dance, but I do shift back and forth just to keep the blood circulating. Anyway, in case not everybody here knows me as well as the rest, my name's Chuck, and I'm one of the original charter members of Kingsmen Social Club and the third club president. And the only other charter member we have with us tonight is His Honor Michael Lincoln, walking back there to the food again. And I'd like to welcome you all to what may be, I don't know, I haven't really done the research to verify this, but I think one of the grandest social club reunions Harding has ever seen. And we'd like to just run through a few memories and reflections back on how Kingsmen got started. And I want to pass something else around. This is a kind of a sign-up list. By the way, Tom, did you bring that clipboard? Where's Tom? Anybody who has served or is presently serving in the U.S. Armed Forces, military, or even civilian law enforcement, I know that includes Brother Allen, please sign this sheet and give the name and location of your favorite restaurant. And we're going to take up a collection a little bit later on. And actually, this is kind of like an item of business, club business, back when I was club president. Maybe we ought to have a formal motion and so forth. I move that we honor our fellow club members and sponsors and so forth with a, what's the word?
Offering.
Complimentary meal as a token of our appreciation for their service to our country, to protect our freedoms, and so forth, as either military or law enforcement, civilian law enforcement. So if all of you that have qualified in that respect would sign that sheet and get it back to me, we'd appreciate it. When I graduated from high school, I had virtually no inclination toward attending a Christian college. I didn't have anything against them, I just didn't know very much about them. I grew up in the church, but due to certain conditions in my family, going to a Christian college just wasn't something I thought very much about. We ever thought very much about or talked about. My mother, who was a legal secretary, would have preferred that I go into law and become an attorney. But my primary ambition was to become the world's greatest race car driver. And I didn't think any Christian colleges offered anything that would help me fulfill that ambition. By the way, does anyone here know what a palindrome is? Oh, good. We've got some educated people in the crowd. If you don't, you can ask me later. I'm not going to go into it now. So for lack of better ideas about how to pursue such a career, I worked 9 months at one of the busiest and most prestigious gas stations in Tulsa, bought a Ducati Desmo motorcycle, struck up a mostly platonic, semi-romantic friendship with a Christian girl named Beth Richmond in Tulsa that we met through some church-related social activity. And I solo toured parts of the country I'd never seen before on my new motorcycle. Then in the fall of 1970, I went to Northeastern A&M Junior College in Miami, Oklahoma, spelled just like Miami, but it's pronounced Miami, to study automotive technology, about 90 minutes from Tulsa. While Beth went to some Christian college called Harding, way off in Arkansas somewhere. We corresponded a little, and I remember her writing about the friendship she was making there that she believed would last a lifetime. I was recruited by the Southwestern Company in Nashville to sell Bibles and Bible study aids door to door for 2 summers, and that stimulated a different part of my psyche, so much that I lost most of my interest in auto racing as a career. And it began a sort of resurgence within me of all those Bible lessons instilled in me while I was growing up. And I became much more interested in the spiritual side of life. But I still didn't think much about going to a Christian college. And through a rather curious series of events, I became president of the student government at that junior college, almost by accident. I won't go into all the details of that either, but after serving a rather short but significant 1 semester in that office, I thought maybe I'd try pursuing studies of a more political nature. So I transferred to the State College in Tahlequah to study political science. And I had probably the single most unforgettable moment I've ever had in any college class in a zoology course there, but that's a story for another occasion too. I also met a campus minister there, a former atheist turned Bible major and Harding graduate named Grant Hauser. Does that ring any bells, Brother Al? Grant Hauser? Anyway, he had such a passion for Bible study that some of it rubbed off on me. And I lost interest in studying political science, so he recommended I go on to Harding for 2 major reasons. 1, to study the Bible more in depth, and 2, to increase the opportunity of finding a good Christian wife. So between all that and attending a Jimmy Allen gospel meeting in Tulsa, I decided to give Harding a good old college try. So again I transferred, this time to Harding, where I knew no one personally except my old friend Beth, who by this time had become the Sub-T Social Club's queen. I was assigned to share a dorm room in, at that time, the brand new Harbin Hall, with a Japanese student who smoked. Beth, who had been having her meals with the social elites and upper crust at the Heritage Center, switched to dining at the Patty Cobb basement, where the more spiritual-minded among us ate, so she and I could dine together and renew our old acquaintance. So for the next however many days or weeks, Beth and others began explaining social club life to me at Harding and asking whether I thought I would like to join one. I didn't know enough about social clubs generally, nor any of them specifically, to know how I felt about that, but what some told me about Pledge Week did not appeal to me very much. So as we dined at Patty Cobb all those days, I kept noticing one of the female workers there because there seemed to be something mysteriously different and special about her. Couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. So I just kept watching her, and one day, if I remember correctly, I first learned her name when she recognized Beth and greeted her and mentioned her name was Tanya. Intolerant as I was, not of Japanese, but of cigarette smoke, I asked the wing dean, or resident assistant on my floor at Harbin, one Brad Blair, whether there was any non-smoking vacancy into which I could move. And he found me one. So as Brad and I got better acquainted, we discovered some significant commonalities between us. He was also a Bible major, had also transferred from a junior college, Alabama Christian, where he had also been president of the student government, and he was also a great admirer of Jimmy Allen. I asked if he was in a social club, and he said he was a member of Galaxy. I told him I knew one of his club sisters, Beth, whom he regarded very highly. He then told me that he and some of his other Bible major friends didn't like the way their clubs were going and had decided to start up a new one with higher spiritual ideals, and Jimmy Allen had agreed to be their first club sponsor. So Brad asked if I'd like to meet the other guys and consider being one of the charter members of their new club, which they plan to call King's Men in honor of Jesus Christ as King of Kings. And so I did. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to introduce to you Mr. Brad Blair, the primary founder and first president of King's Men Social Club, to share a few of his own perspectives on how King's Men began and where on earth he's been and what on earth he's been doing, for heaven's sake, since he left Harding. But Brad couldn't make it, so I guess it's up for me to, and maybe one or two others, to fill in for him as best we can. I believe 10 of the other King's Men Charter members were Brad's fellow transfers from Alabama Christian. Dave Bland was from Colorado, Jim Womack I think was from Texas, and I from Oklahoma made 14 in all. One of our charter members, one of those 10 from Alabama, who also distinguished himself by singing the lead in King's Men OEGE's first spring sing rendition of Sweet Home Alabama, grew up to become a White County judge here in Searcy. Ladies and gentlemen, here to help fill in a few of the blanks about how King's Men got started and whatever else he would like to share with us, I am proud to present to you His Honor, Judge Michael Lincoln.
Thank you, Chuck. I grew up in Alabama. Roll Tide. I've lived in Arkansas almost 40 years. I'd like to introduce you to my wife, Shelley. You stand up, please. Shelley didn't attend Harding University, but many of you may remember there used to be a skating rink where Walmart Supercenter is now. You'd have to be my age or older to remember that. But College Church would sponsor skating parties at the beginning of each new year and at the beginning of each spring semester. I was a senior, and I'd already decided that I was going to leave Harding single and go the Neil Pryor route, go out and preach for a while and find me somebody out away from Harding University or Harding College at the time. I was vice president of the Student Association at Harding that year, and my roommate, Mike Bowers, who was also King's Men, chastised me for not planning to go to this skating party. I said, I don't want to go. And he said, you need to go. You're vice president. You ought to go and, meet these new students coming in. So I went, unbeknownst to me. My wife, Shelley, was 19 at the time. Her mom and daddy brought her to the skating party. She was not a student at Harding, but Jim Woodruff, preacher at the College Church at the time, introduced that there was a skating party, a mixer for college students. And Shelley's daddy leaned over and pointed at her and said, "You're going." So I go to the skating party, drugged by my roommate, Mike Bowers. Shelley goes to the skating party. An obedient daughter, not being drugged by her mom and dad, but an obedient daughter obeying her daddy at 19 years old to go to a skating party. Let me stop right here and say, this a few years ago, we were laying there ready to go to sleep, and she said, "Why did you marry me?" That's a great question to ask somebody when they're about to go to sleep. She said, why did you marry me? And I simply said, because you were obedient. And I said, because you were obedient to your father. And what I meant by that, if she had said, as a 19-year-old, no, I'm not going to go, which a lot of, we've raised 6 19-year-olds. We've heard that many a time. No, I'm not going to at 19. But she just simply said, yes, sir. I use that example a lot when I'm speaking to young people about honoring your mother and father so it may go well with you. And of course I say, look at what she got. I may have to take this shirt off. I'm having trouble breathing. I think this is a girdle material or something. But anyway, I'm married. My degree was Bible degree. I went 2 years of graduate school of religion. In class one day, a professor was talking about the need for male role models in elementary school. I went home that day and told my wife, I said, well, when I get through, we're going to go back to Harding. I'm going to get an elementary degree. And I did, taught for 4 years, elementary principal for 13. The board of directors of Wyldewood called me and asked me if I would follow Coach Groover out here. I did for 10 years. And then I lost my brain completely and ran for public office. But at each of those venues, I really believe with all my heart that God was directing me. God directed me that night through Mike Bowers to go to that party. So many of you remember Dr. Jimmy Carr, who coined the phrase, "It's great to be at Harding." He saw me walk in, came over to me and said, Michael, I have this young lady I want to introduce you to. And I said, no thanks, get somebody else. He looked at me, he says, she's really pretty, Michael. I said, I don't care, Dr. Carr, just get somebody else. And finally he said, well, my goodness, would you just do me a favor and skate with her one time? And I said, okay, I will do you a favor. I will skate with her one time, and then I will introduce her to other people. Did I mention Mike Byers was the one that took me to the party? Well, the other guys that were there were members of Galaxy. And for those of you old-time Kingsmen, we always called them greasers. I don't know if y'all remember that. And I knew these guys, and I knew why they were at the party. And I thought, I can't let these greasers, touch, even approach this girl. So we skated, and so here was my first question to Shelley. The first time I met her. I said, so what do you want to do with your life? And she said, find a Christian mate, get married, and have babies. And I thought, wow. So I said, how many? She said, 5 or 6. And I said, what about 7? She said, that sounds good. And so we just spent the night skating, and I spent the night protecting her from the greasers. Remember they used to have that skating where they blow the whistle and you change partners? Well, they blew the whistle, she changed partners. He blew the whistle, I went and grabbed her and said, let's get off the floor. And we didn't skate anymore. But for those of you that don't know us, we have 6 kids, 19 grandchildren. So let me get back, that's kind of where I got to where I am. But Brad Blair was, going back to Alabama Christian, when I was a senior in high school, it was 1971, and the public school situation in those years were really bad. My daddy picked me up from school one day and said, you won't come back to school here. So we drove from Mobile, Alabama to Montgomery, Alabama, and he enrolled me in Alabama Christian High School. I was 16 years old. And the next week I was living in a college dorm, 16 years old, living in a college dorm, no curfew, no adult supervision. 2 weeks later, my daddy let me take my car up there, and the school let me take my car. So here's a 16-year-old with a car, no curfew, no adult supervision. And I'm alive, standing here in front of you. But Brad Blair was one of those college young men that kind of took me under his wings, and without him and Rick Carvall, Scotty Langham, Pete Adams, and some of those other guys that came from Alabama Christian to Harding University. The reason I came to Harding College is because of Brad Blair. He convinced me to come. I had to talk my folks into letting me come all the way from Mobile. They put me in school when I was 16, and here I am 18, and having to convince them to be able to go to college, But anyway, I knew about Brad's desire to form a social club. And it's not Kingsman. You'll need to understand that. It is 2 words. It's not 1 word. It's 2 words. King's men. And that's the way we said it. King's men. We never said Kingsman. Because our desire was to be men of the King. And that's why we looked to Jimmy Allen to be our sponsor. Because we viewed this man as a man of the King. It's real interesting because Chuck asked about classes that we took. I tried to take every class that he taught, even though he harassed me, even though he, if he did the things to me today that he did back then, I'd have a pretty good lawsuit, Abe, I remember coming in your class one day, I had sandals on. He says, Abe, you gotta go get some socks. And I said, Brother Allen, you can't wear socks with sandals. Precisely, Abe. Get out here and get some socks on. And I said, but Brother Allen, he says, don't give me that, but Jesus wore them. Just get out of here and go get some shoes on. And then one day I did a paper. You had to write a paper, read books, and write a paper. That's what you did in Dr. Allen's class. Read books, write papers. And I misspelled his name.
Jimmy or Alan?
Jimmy. So, the good thing about it, I didn't put my name on the paper. So he's standing in class. I'm going to try to do my best Jimmy Allen impression. Who did this paper? Who spelled my name like a woman? Who did it? I'm sure you won't admit it, you gutless wonder. Who did this paper? Abe, can't believe you spelled my name like a woman. Boy, don't you know I can beat you like a yard dog? I can beat you any day of the week. Get on the basketball court and let me wear you out. You remember that? He's going to say no. Anybody ever play basketball with this man? He's ruthless.
Believe in winning.
He believes in winning, that's right. And he also believes in calling fouls. Foul. Every time he missed a shot. Foul. Dr. Allen, I was 5 feet from you. Foul. Okay, Dr. Allen. Here's the funniest story I remember that involves this dear man. We're playing flag football. Floyd Fernandez reminded me of this story. If you remember Floyd Fernandez. He said, Link, the thing I remember about you, we're playing flag football against the faculty. You remember that story, Link? Oh yeah, I remember that story. Anyway, the faculty prided themselves that they'd never been beat, okay? We were winning. Dr. Allen, playing running back, gets a pitch. He's running down the field, and I grabbed his flags. I'm standing in the middle of the field. Actually, I just got one. And people reminded me last night I usually had 2, but for him, I just got one. And he keeps running, and the student referee, touchdown! And I'm standing in the middle of the field, Nikki, with his flag. I said, I've got his flag! Floyd tells me, I'm yelling, I got his flag! I got his flag! You think a student referee is going to... And I'm standing there yelling, I got his flag! Well, Coach Beck, y'all remember Coach Beck? Comes out to the middle of the field and he says, if you don't be quiet, I'm going to ban you from intramurals. And I said, but Coach Beck, I got his flag. He said, don't say another word. And I said, I got his flag. So I got escorted off the field, banned from intramurals, and the faculty won because the student referee said,
He now works for the SEC favoring Bama. Huh?
oh, yeah. I got that guy a job, yeah. And the second story I remember, y'all remember Scotty Langham? Some of you old timers might remember Scotty Langham. We called him Swivel Hips because you couldn't catch his flag. Well, we were playing them again the next year, and this man tackled Scotty Langham because he couldn't get his flag. He just tackled him. Well, the rule was, if you tackle, it became an automatic touchdown because flag football had gotten so out of hand, lots of people were tackling. But because my friend Jimmy Allen tackled Scotty, it was just a 5-yard penalty. But I love this man. I took every class that I could. I want to tell one more story about his class, restoration history. I loved the way this man taught restoration history. You know, just I still remember so many stories about who we are and where we came from and what makes us who we are. And our kids need to hear those stories because a lot of our kids have forgotten who we are as a movement. But this man, his tests were brutal. And I remember this one test, this one question was, who rode with Alexander Campbell to the rice debate? And the answer was Brigham Young, by the way. Anyway, we were reviewing the test, and a friend of mine raised his hand and said, do you not think that was a little picky of a question? And Dr. Allen said, no. And my friend mumbled, well, why didn't you ask how many ticks were on the horse? Well, he heard him. And as only my friend Jimmy Allen can do, he politely dressed this young man down. Politely. But he reminded us that the reason that question was important, that he wanted us to understand that at one time, Brigham Young rode with Alexander Campbell. And then at a later date, Brigham Young broke off and went to Utah. But he wanted us to understand what was going on in the restoration history, and that Brigham Young was a student of Alexander and Thomas Campbell, and how important that was. And so that's why he asked the question. We had a great beginning. I'm gonna tell one more story, if I can. Our first year, we had one pledge. We almost lost him. He was a military, just got out of the military. One pledge, and we had pledged we were the King's men. We weren't going to do the silly stuff in pledge night. Well, one of our guys just kind of forgot, and he put some really, really hot sauce on this guy's lip. And it really started burning. And this guy stood up and he said, let me tell you something. I've been through boot camp. I've been overseas. I don't need this crap. Excuse me, Dr. Allen, for saying crap. And he turned around and was walking off. Our only pledge. And I ran after him. I grabbed him and I said, please, we'll get you some milk. We'll get you some bread. We're making this right. Please. I mean, our reputation was already at stake, and here we were losing our only pledge. So I convinced this guy to come back. Well, then the next year, we won club football, and we'd been playing football together for years, and I just love those guys. At Alabama Christian, we were known as the Headhunters. So we didn't want to form a club at Harding called the Headhunters, so we called it King's Men. But anyway, the next year we had there was like 17 or 18 of us, and we had like 41 put us for first choice. It was unbelievable. Well, the core group decided we were not going to grow that fast because we wanted to be true to our roots. So we decided we'd take 17. We, equal one-on-one. We felt like we could mentor one-on-one. Well, there was this guy that put us as fourth choice. Fourth choice. Fourth choice. We had 41 first choices, and there was this guy that put us as fourth choice. His name was Tim Woodruff. And I pleaded for the core group to extend Tim Woodruff a pledge. And they looked at me like I was crazy. We got 41 first, we're only going to take 17 of those, and you want us to send a pledge notice to somebody to the fourth. Well, I knew who Tim had put first, second, and third. I knew whoever he put first was going to blackball him. I had that inside information. After all, I was vice president of the student association. I had lots of inside information. Who he put second, they didn't take second choices. Who he put third didn't take third choices. So I knew if we sent him a pledge, we'd get him. But it was hard to convince everybody, but we did. And I remember the day that pledge went out. Ours was mimeograph paper that we cut, so it was about that thick, and we hand wrote it. You are invited to join King's Men. And we would fold it up and put it in the box, Everybody else sent these former invitations in envelopes, and gold trim and everything. But we had mimeograph paper. Now, I remember seeing Woodruff come out of First Chapel. I had second. He was coming out first, and I was going in second. He was undoing this pledge, and he looked up, and he looked at me, and he says, I am so grateful for this invitation. And I said, I'm so thankful that you got it. Now, for those of you that know anything about the history of King's Men, we were the first social club to win Springsteen 3 years in a row. Anybody that knows anything about King's Men, you know one of the big reasons why we were able to do that. It was by a gentleman named Tim Woodruff. Now, this is what you need to do. You just need to believe that story. You don't need to ask Tim about it at all. Just believe believe the story just like it is. But I want to tell you that being part of that initial group of King's Men was just really, really so enjoyable. I graduated in '75, went to grad school for 2 years, came back. And so this was 1979. And I knew there was me and a guy named Billy Walker. We were the only two charter members left on campus. And I knew that the current club members had to find us. That was part of their assignment, find the two charter members. Well, I was married and I was working at night. I was only on campus during class time. And if you were not in education classes with me, you didn't see me. I was not active. I just went on campus. I was married, had a kid, working at night, going to school. So I remember being in the Heritage Center and I saw this pledge, and I thought, well, I'm going to help him out. I had this jersey on. I thought, I want to help him out. I got this jersey on. So I'm in the elevator with him going up Heritage. I said, hey, Pledge, let me see your book. I ain't giving you my book. I said, Pledge, I'm trying to help you out. Let me see your book. You ain't getting my book. I said, Pledge, where do you think I got this shirt? I don't know, but you ain't getting my book. They had changed the shirts by then. I said, you don't recognize this shirt, Pledge? I ain't never seen that kind of shirt in my life. wouldn't give me his book. I said, well, pledge, my name is Michael Lincoln. I guarantee you by Friday night you're going to know who I am. And he wouldn't give me his pledge book. But hey, it's been great being here. Chuck, thanks for your time. Thanks for your endurance. God bless.
Just one little question, Mike. Since Brother Allen can't remember, I'm curious about the relationship between him and Brad or you or any of the other guys. How did that choice for him to be one of our first club sponsors originate?
It was easy for us because Dr. Allen, he was an evangelist, so he went all around the country preaching messages. So I remember as a young student at Alabama Christian and as a young student at Harding University, every time this man spoke, I don't know if you got to be my age to remember this, but every time this man spoke, you felt like you needed to come forward and repent. I mean, and back in those days, there would be 90, 120 responses every time this man spoke. Some of them for baptism, but a lot of them just because he pricked our hearts. So it was an easy choice for us.
Okay, but what made it special between him and you and Brad and the other guys? I mean, did you have a pre-existing personal relationship with him? Or
It was just...
was he just picked out of the faculty field as...
No, we knew him because of his reputation
There
doing
were
those...
two of us. There was Brad Altman.
Yes.
So there were
Dean
two
Altman,
of us.
yeah.
They
Dean
took
Altman.
me because it took him.
Yeah. We almost got Jerry Jones to come with him, but Jerry was sponsor of TNT. And you know, we thought, man, if we can get Jimmy Allen and Jerry Jones, we'd become spiritual giants, you know. But I do remember the time that we won club football small and TNT won football big. Jerry and Jimmy got to jawing about one another. We almost had a playoff championship where a large club played a small club. We said we would be on the field. TNT said they wouldn't play us. But I don't know if you remember that, but you and Jerry had a big heyday about wanting us to play to settle it. We were there.
Okay, we're going to have to step it up a little bit and give enough time for Brother Allen to speak with us. Mike kind of ran ahead of my little chronology that I was narrating here. That first year after electing our first set of officers, the next major order of business was choosing a club queen. And lo and behold, almost everyone else in the club also highly admired that somewhat mysterious young lady who worked in Patty Cobb cafeteria named Tanya. And I don't think anyone else was even considered as a nominee for our club queen that year. And we were all amazed and thankful and marveled at the fact that she was still available and had not already been made some other club's queen. But Tanya not only became our queen, by the end of that first school year, was selected that year's Pettigene queen as well. Tanya was one of the few, if I'm not mistaken, maybe the only female Bible major at that time. And we hailed from Clyde, Texas, and we nicknamed her the Pride of Clyde. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to introduce to you, if you don't already know her, our first club queen and 1974 Pettigene queen, Tanya Howard. But since she wasn't able to make it, I guess it's up to me to fill in for her as best I can. Thank you, everyone. It was such a great surprise and an honor to be nominated and chosen as Kingsmen's first club queen. Thank you very much. God bless you all. So we barely got our club chartered before it was time for Pledge Week that first year. We didn't even have our jerseys. We came up with a grand total of 3 pledges that first year, and Michael told you about some of the back and forths we had with James Stewart, who was ready to walk away from the club after that first rough night. And there was Larry Poston and Kenny McDaniel, and I don't remember Larry Poston being at Rough Night that year, but he must have been. All I can remember is that one lone pledge, Kenny McDaniel, enduring all of our abuse and humiliation that we gave him. Let's see here. The next irony in Kingsmen's history is that for a club full of Bible majors, the greatest mark we made on campus that first year, in fact the first 2 years, was to win small club football championships. No thanks to me, I was a gymnastics assistant, student coach, so physically active that some thought I was a PE major, but I had very little prior interest in football. But because that was the best joint participation activity we had those first 3 semesters, I decided to give it a try. Some of the others told me I had the speed, but the closest I ever came to breaking a bone in my body my whole life was when I tried to catch a pass thrown by, if I remember correctly, Scott Langham. I used to have a pretty mean baseball throwing arm myself, but I've never figured out how anyone can throw those big, oblong, unwieldy footballs so smoothly, so far, so accurately, and so hard that it would fold a guy's thumb like mine flat over past where it should have locked out. I certainly couldn't, but Scott could and did mine, and you can still see the difference if you look closely between the knuckles on each of my 2 thumbs. This one's slightly larger. That's the one that was folded backward by trying to catch one of his passes. And so if Scott were here, he's probably made the longest lasting impression upon my life of any club brothers because of that. I would now like to introduce to you Dave Bland, our second-year club president, who is now a professor of homiletics. That's a fancy word for preaching at Harding Graduate School, or Harding School of Theology, formerly known as Harding Grad School, in Memphis, Tennessee. But I thought he was coming, but apparently he wasn't able to make it either, so I guess I'm going to have to fill in as best I can. I became secretary historian our second year, and we had quite a few more pledges, as Mike has already pointed out. And I think the biggest surprise, somebody else will have to be Michael, I guess. None of the others from that year, I think, are with us. Craig Atterbury might have been here that second year. How OEGE became our sister club, because frankly, I was kind of caught off guard and surprised by that selection. Our first 3 club queens were not from OEGE, and I didn't know anyone in OEGE before they became our sister club, with the possible exception of the fiancé of one of our charter members, Larry Wisenant, before they became our club. And I don't know who threw that election, not that I've ever been sorry. I especially loved Betty Heitman, a.k.a. Twiggy, and Rebecca Jane Cox, 2 of the best secret sisters any club brother could ever have. Anyway, Harding began having spring sings that second year, now with our new sister club, OEGE. We entered that first spring sing competition with the theme, Songs of the South. How we, with 11 guys from Alabama came up with that theme is beyond me. We didn't win anything that first go-around in spring sing, but it helped us grow closer together as, shall we say, sibling clubs. So in our third year, 1975, I was honored to be elected Kingsmen's 3rd president, even though I wasn't really sure I wanted to return that next school year, with newlywed Larry Wisenant, the first member of Kingsmen to marry a member of OEGE before, missed that already, even though he wasn't sure he wanted to be president in case I didn't come back. Relative newcomers Ross Gallagher, Craig Atterbury, Gary Jones, and Stan Chisholm rounded out the executive council that year. And I think we had more new pledges that third year than the first 2 years combined. So our rough night that year was one pretty big bash of a party.